Welcome, welcome. We are live, but we haven't really started. Songs that are not going to become hits. Yeah, I don't know. The Facebook chat doesn't want to work.
Even after you tried the instructions, right? Where they were like, log in again.
Yeah, they just log in, log out. That's not much. It's like, so I don't know. Something's borked. I hope we get it fixed by the time we have guests on the show. Because then it could be sad if we can't like flash comments on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because even when I use the third-party chat app, it's not third-party, but the standalone chat app, it still doesn't want to roll. Legendary.
Okay, the live on YouTube.
Legendary.
Is running. The live in Facebook is running. We currently have one person. I'm not sure who.
If you're here, say hello, because we can't see you.
Shablam.
Why shablam?
I don't know.
And then I just need you to keep the Facebook comments up when you switch. I mean, if you're not using a tab, then switch back to Facebook, just so that we have our monitor. Although it looks like it doesn't want to load for you.
Yeah. No, maybe we should turn off the TV.
Oh, there is that one thing. Multitask.
2 minutes to 9. 2 minutes to 9.
Also a song that's not going to become a hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's page unresponsive.
Toby's computer is angry.
Now it says 4. Hey, hey, McCoy. Okay, the monitor is running now, so we can see Urim and McCoy have joined us.
Hooray!
We'll be talking about the legendary deck building game in a few minutes.
So we're going to try to keep this broad and general because it's a big line of games, so.
Oh, yes, it is. There are surprisingly a large number of re-implementations. There is a video game adaptation.
Yeah, but it's like an official release video game. Does it really count? It's 9 o'clock.
It's 9 o'clock. I think we should start because it's 9 o'clock.
Generally, although it would be nice to have more people.
We're hitting 5, although we're not really hearing from them. But I guess 9 is 9, so we start the timer. And hi!
I have to put the caption. Okay.
This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy, our little place on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
This is completely unscripted because just then Toby changed the word. and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for continuing to support our little show.
Yay!
We try to have every episode be 30 minutes of a topic that we've chosen either from people who have submitted suggestions or from something we want to talk about. And today's episode,
Now, technically speaking, is a contribution by Mitch, who also loves these games. Hooray! Also, our color balance is very weird. Look,
we've noticed that it changes depending on the color of shirt we wear.
Yeah, I think it generates a different contrast. So,
But now's a good time to talk about shirts because we always forget to.
we do, yeah.
Today
So,
we are wearing.
Trixie and Katya shirts. We have a lot of Trixie and Katya shirts.
So let's begin.
So we're talking about the legendary line of deck building games published by Upper Deck, who you may be more familiar with them as the people who still do a lot of sports related trading cards.
Yes.
When you talk about sort of like quote unquote baseball cards, Upper Deck has been in this business for a long time. And then back in the day, they also used to publish collectible cards for Marvel Comics. And then they decided to make a game somewhere down the line, and that's why we are here.
The designers Devin Lowe, and he created the legendary Marvel deck building game.
But before we get into Legendary specifically, and Toby, you're off screen already, we're going to talk about first, what are deck building games?
What?
Why are you not saying anything? I think you're going off camera. Okay, deck building games are a particular style of card game that allows players to, in contrast to things like Magic the Gathering, which is a collectible card game where you have to buy the cards beforehand to construct your decks, and then you bring them into play, and that's how the game goes. In deck building games, you all start with a set of what are typically called basic cards, that can let you do one of two things. And then, but throughout the game, you will purchase or recruit or acquire cards that get added to your deck. So the longer you play, the more varied your play style will be, and
the more efficient you are as the game progresses, depending on the cards.
That depends. You may not be more efficient. You may just have many cards. So what cards you choose to buy and how you sort of construct your deck mid-game is what defines the joy of this genre. And this includes games like what? Other than Legendary, of course. Dominion.
Dominion was one of the first to do deck building
I've
games.
never really played Dominion. It's funny.
You have Clank.
Clank is a more recent implementation, and they added in a dungeon crawl exploration type engines. That's fun.
And then you have Super Motherlode, which also has a deck building aspect to it as you buy the cards
That's
that you
true.
use to blow up bombs.
Super Motherlode. And if we're going to talk about games that happen to have a deck building element, Great Western Trail, because you buy cows to make a better cow deck. And that's always fun.
Now, going beyond just the deck building mechanic, the Marvel deck building game also has variable setups wherein, depending on the schemes and masterminds you choose, the feel of the game can change entirely, as well as the type of heroes you will have present in that scenario. Yeah,
so I'm changing captions. So now we're going to start talking about Upper Deck's legendary line. And I say line because, it all started with Marvel. Marvel, Legendary, a Marvel deck building game, was the first of the many deck building games they created and released. And following the same principle, they just kept iterating and iterating. And oh wait, I prepared a thing so that you can see. So like this is a snapshot of the Marvel line, and this isn't even the most current. It's only up until a certain degree.
Yeah.
So the range has gotten pretty insane.
Checking Board Game Geek, it lists 30 entries for expansions for the Marvel deck building game alone, and I presume that includes promo cards and smaller expansions. But then beyond just Marvel, the game has been re-implemented for other franchises, as well as for a secondary approach, which is the Legendary Encounters.
Yeah, so before we dive into that, let's talk about the main Legendary line in itself. So what's so notable about Legendary? So the nice thing about the Marvel Legendary line is that it lets you portray different Marvel heroes.
Yes.
And so like this part, we have a tiny snapshot of a spread of Deadpool cards. And the how do you want to do? You want to talk about the basic art
Well,
construction of a
the
card?
main
Yeah.
the main premise of the game is you're not the heroes.
Yeah, that's
You're
the
actually
interesting
Shield.
thing. We are members of Shield, and the cards that we have represent calling help from the Marvel
Heroes that you recruit to help to stop whatever scheme is being implemented by the mastermind. Because every session you will have at least one mastermind, which is the main villain that you're trying to fight in
And
the
then should
game.
I scoot over a bit because you're falling off screen?
In some setups, there may be multiple masterminds, and others there might even be masterminds that join mid game.
Yeah, and the game, the starter set actually starts with a nice round list of different popular heroes. Also because it ties into things like the MCU, especially the early MCU. So of course there's a Hulk character and Iron Man and the like. But then over time they have released more and more expansions for Legendary that cover different franchises or different stories over the course of Marvel Comics history.
With the popularity, for example, of the movies, there was the movie edition that came out that used images from the movies,
which is perfectly not in this picture. Okay.
Yep. With the popularity of the TV series, Shield ended up having its own expansion.
Also not in picture.
And then there is even I'm definitely choosing stuff that's not there because the next one I was going to talk about is the villains expansion, wherein you actually get to play the villains rather than
also
the heroes.
not there. Okay, but and then it's, more than the movie stuff, it also ties into major comic book events. So like if you see in this image on the far right, there's World War Hulk, or in the background, in the upper two pylons are like Secret Wars. So there was part 1 and 2 featuring all the different Wars characters. So in general, there seems to be a determined effort to make a card for almost every
major event or major
character or whatever,
major crossover.
And then as sort of things, but I like it as things, as I say, movies get released. Legendary, the card game, will try to ride movie popularity,
yes,
but they will still tie to the comic book versions of the characters. I think I most felt this with things like the Guardians of the Galaxy expansion or the Ant-Man expansion, which were more true to the comic book stories and art style than their movie depictions.
They're aware that the other forms of media are marketing the game in some way, but they also know that their core fan base will be fans of the comic.
Yes.
So they make sure the content still celebrates the things that we love in the comic.
Yeah, so when you get down to it, when you look at these hero cards, there's a lot of nuanced flavor to it. And a lot of it ties to, first there's like team affiliations in the upper left. In this case, it's all Deadpool and his mercenaries for money. And then there are different colors of cards. As you can see in this example, there's sort of something that's black and yellow and red. And this ties to certain class abilities that may or may not trigger. And then the card text will vary. And on the left side, lower left side, you'll see either a star or a slash, which represents recruit points,
or strike
for attacking things. And then the lower right corner is the cost of the card to purchase.
So by playing cards in a specific order, you can trigger, I guess combos is the best way we could call it.
Yes.
Where class abilities trigger. With every expansion, Marvel has added more and more keywords, which has brought us some level of difficulty playing sometimes, but that's part of the fun because you realize specific heroes actually work well with certain heroes, and some heroes really hate some heroes, which nicely captures how they are in the comic line.
Yeah, there's a lot of thought that's put into the sort of... There are 5 classes, and how those 5 classes interplay is kind of fascinating, and how they really try to tie into different character backstories so that the powers make sense. And then at the same time, there's the things about team affiliation. So certain people of the same team affiliation can work. And over the course of the game's history, they've released so many different team affiliations, with Avengers naturally being the largest, craziest team that there is.
So we might not necessarily know if they really designed it that way, But sometimes when we look at the cards, we find them echoing certain things that we see in the comics.
Yes.
For example, the Wolverine cards, which are in the base deck, work interestingly well with the Colossus cards.
Yeah.
Because they make you think of the fastball special.
Yeah, that you can totally want to throw.
But then
Wolverine.
if you try collecting Wolverine cards with Cyclops cards as your combo in the game, you will find yourself struggling because they don't seem to work well together.
And and then I wonder why that is. Why won't those two work? No. And then and that's like that's why the Marvel line has gotten so big.
Mhm.
We are completists with this line, and we have pretty much every expansion except for the latest, which is the Cosmic one. And it's just insane at the scale, because then they've designed the game such that even street level heroes, quote unquote, things like Marvel's Defenders, so Iron Fist, Shang-Chi, and the like, can try going toe to toe with the likes of Galactus,
And
the
Thanos.
Devourer World, or Thanos. And you know what? They still might have a chance if they are a solid team and their card strategy synergies come together. And that brings us talking very briefly about the masterminds, who are the big bad guys in this game. So actually, there's two elements to what the players are facing, because we did not mention clearly, this is a semi-cooperative game
Mhm.
that you are
Yes.
all fighting against the board, so to speak.
Yes.
But at the end of the game, at least in the Marvel line, you're also trying to find out who is the best hero
The
among
most
you.
heroic one has the most points earned by beating enemies.
Yeah, so in this case, I mean, the structure of a mastermind, suddenly they're super difficult to hit. So the Mandarin is 16 life.
And
to
bear
hit.
in mind, in a typical game, you have 6 cards in your hand. At the basic card level, each card gives you 1 point. So you might have 6 strike, assuming you have more than just the 4 basic strike cards,
Yeah.
or 6 recruit. Ultimate cards tend to cost around 7 or higher.
7, 8, 9.
And then if you have opponents like, let's say here, the Mandarin, who requires 16 strike to
It's
or 10-minute
amazing.
mark. It's a 10-minute
It's
mark.
the 10 minutes into any video, we gotta go dark. It's strange.
Okay, so yeah, we're assuming we're back. Hopefully, it's still dark, but typically everyone can still hear us. They just can't see us.
We're talking from the future. So, but okay, then and I bring up the screen again.
There,
So,
okay, I can see it on the monitor. So yeah, you have different villains of exceedingly high strike demands, but then many of them are designed to work thematically with what they tend to work with. So, for example, Galactus, he always has the Heralds of Galactus as the enemy, and the more of those you fight, the better you are, because that means you've been honing yourself for specific colors.
yeah.
Mandarin has the rings.
So if you own the rings, then he gets weaker.
Yes, and then there's of course the Infinity Stones and Thanos. And
Yes.
as people spread out the Infinity Stones, it's easier to fight Thanos.
So it's all these new things, and then beyond the mastermind that you have to defeat, there is the scheme, or what is this mastermind doing to the poor
Yes.
city? What is their big plan? And the combination of mastermind schemes, henchmen groups,
Mhm.
villain groups, all come together into so many variations for unique play. In fact, that there are a number of unofficial randomizer services on the web, or as
Mhm.
apps, that just generate random combinations of cards for you to see if you can defeat it.
But at the same time, part of the fun is literally creating your scenarios.
Yes.
So like we've had instances where okay, let's have a very mutant title. So we'll have Sentinels, and then we'll have the
want to
Hellfire Club.
And I want to make the X-Men Gold team. you know?
Yeah, or maybe we had this one time wherein we were like, can street level defeat Galactus?
We were determined.
So we
it happened.
focused
It didn't
on street
happen.
level heroes. That was no, we did. We defeated it with Natasha,
Oh,
because she used all
the Black
the
Widow,
bystanders to fight Galactus in the end, whatever that
then-
means.
and I know we did we tried different combinations of different secret Avengers teams,
Mhm.
and wow, those teams do not work well together.
And admittedly, the game line is so robust that the wealth of scene cards available to use in your games is just tremendous. You have everything from the common bank robberies
Hmm.
to very thematic Daily Bugle situation that, if you play it without using Spider-Man, it's so hard to win. You have some that specifically have setup rules. So, like, there's the Avengers versus X-Men, which requires you to create teams that
X-Men
have half,
teams and
half number of each. And then you have really ingenious ones, such as when the villains go back in time to kill your ancestors. And as you play through that, the game mechanics actually make you feel like you're losing people as
because
they die in the
you
past.
destroy you remove from the game every iteration of a particular character if they were assassinated in the past.
And one of the most, I think it was one of the biggest ones that had the biggest impact for us was when we first encountered Galactus.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
In a game, you have 5 spaces, which is what we call the city spaces. Villains go through these spaces.
Starting from the sewers all the way to the bridge.
Yes, and once they get past the bridge, they escape, which then triggers bad things for the players.
Yep.
So being able to manage and control the villains in the city is vital to winning the game. Galactus, as a destroyer of worlds.
Yeah. So each mastermind has what is called a master strike. There are 5 copies of this card. It represents the mastermind directly attacking the players. So it's really bad stuff. Galactus's super bad stuff is that he destroys a city space.
He makes it smaller.
Yeah, so if they're starting with 5 spaces after his first master strike, he consumes the bridge. So now there are only 4 spaces in the city before things escape.
The game moves faster. The
Oh
difficulty
my
ramps up.
gosh.
So you
And
really
seeing
feel-
Galactus, we represent this by putting Galactus's card on the space. So
Yes.
he's really moving forward towards the beginning of the city, and it's bonkers.
So you have that amazing feel, and then you also have the amazing feel of how the bystander cards jump into the game. Because bystanders, generally speaking, are basically bonus points.
yeah, it's 1 point per bystander.
If you defeat an enemy and they happen to have a bystander,
you
held
rescue
hostage,
those
you rescue them.
bystanders.
But then with the expansions, they've started to add special bystanders.
Yes.
Everything from Stanley. You
We
can
always have to bring
actually
up
rescue Stanley. To some of the New Mutants before they were popular enough because the movie wasn't out.
Yeah, they made
They
them
were just
bystanders
bystanders.
first, and then they made them their own
Well, expansion.
expansion. So what can you do?
But then you have the vicious ones like that shape-shifting copycat.
Okay, our bystander stack is like this high, combined with the basic bystanders, the villains bystanders, and all the special bystanders from different expansions. But shapeshifting copycat always comes out. When you rescue it, the first time you rescue it, it enters the city again as a henchman
And
villain.
you now have to fight it.
and now you have to kill it before
So-
you can really earn the
so
points.
as you can see-
oh my god, rules.
Marvel deck building itself has already so much to offer. And from what we've been talking about, it's almost like
And I
there's-
hope it makes sense to you. We
there's-
super nerd out.
there's way too many things to play. Now imagine if that similar game line even comes up with new ways. And that's when we come up with
Legendary encounters.
Legendary Encounters tosses it around by having the pre-generated construction a bit more thematic. One of the key differences in Legendary Encounters is you now play a character rather than shield. Or, in some cases, you might not be a character, but it's so obvious that spreading out is not the best choice. Focusing on your character still is the best choice.
And then, like in the original Legendary line, you normally have 5 protagonist characters in your possible deck to recruit.
Yes.
In the
Encounters
in
line.
the encounters line, you only have 4.
Mhm.
But it's still hard. You think that, oh, that's less choices, but that means that bigger chances of getting the cards you need. But no, there's just something about the game balance that's totally different.
And there's often the times that you're the one stuck with no one to choose from because everyone else's cards are there.
And Encounters first debuted with the exploration of a non-Marvel franchise. They went with Aliens. In fact, Legendary Encounters Aliens was our first Legendary game. We played this before we played Marvel.
We thought it was the best ever until we really got to get into Marvel.
I mean, they're both good. They're
Yes.
both good in very different ways, and they execute very different stories. But it was just a thing that, and then if you play base Legendary Encounters versus, and you compare it to base Legendary Marvel, admittedly, Legendary Marvel isn't as strong with the
Yes.
base set alone.
And part of what causes that is that Legendary Encounters has a mechanic called
Coordinate.
which allows players who isn't playing their turn to still play a card to help the player who's active.
Yeah, that's not something that has been seen. That wasn't in the main legendary
Yes.
line up until I think the Spider-Man Homecoming expansion. That's the only time they brought in some coordinate cards.
Now, I think it was Karen who brought it up that legendary encounters has allowed as well the expansion of other franchises. Um, this ranges, as mentioned, from Alien.
So then we have to be careful because then like certain movies or shows have been adapted to one line or the other.
Yes.
The Encounters line, because it started with aliens, I feel like leans towards somewhat scarier.
The idea of survival being prominent or
Yes.
being important.
That's why the Aliens was first followed up by Predator, so you could live
Mhm.
your Alien versus Predator dreams and have the two compete.
Then there was Firefly. After Firefly, there was X-Files.
X-Files is also an Encounters game.
Whereas
So-
the non-encounters line expanded beyond Marvel. It started to have
the
Big
first
Trouble.
thing they did was Big Trouble in Little China, which is like, oh my gosh, do people remember this movie? Was there such a clamoring demand to adapt this movie into a deck building game? But they did it.
Other than that, there was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes, which is cool. And Buffy, oh my gosh, Buffy and the Vampire Slayer introduced a light and dark mechanic, which I cannot fully explain in the time that we have left.
And I guess that was then reused for the New Mutants expansion for Marvel in a similar way.
Yeah, but Light and Dark and Buffy made so much sense because they live next to the Hellmount and bad stuff really happens. It really tied into that. And I think that's really the genius of the legendary games, is how much they dive into the material they're adapting and make it feel super
Mhm.
great.
How much they find ways to design mechanics that make you remember the show or feel the show more. Really briefly, Firefly had the Serenity itself as a character that you had to upgrade or repair through the game sessions.
And then the whole, because of the primary crew of the show, then they really made it a mechanic that the cards that you have in your deck versus the ones you didn't select for your deck are still characters who have a way to influence the game.
Yes.
And balancing the crew powers versus your decks
Mhm.
is fantastic. And then it also introduced the inevitable,
Yes.
which is that big bad enemy that cannot be defeated. It just marks the end of the game as it moves through the quote unquote city spaces. They're
And
no longer
you,
cities.
and you have no choice but to find a way to defeat it, or it will beat you.
Because curse your inevitable betrayal, and all that. And then the most recent franchise that they explored
Yes.
is a quote unquote basic legendary game, which is Legendary James Bond,
Mm-hmm.
which. Wow. I mean, you think that the character range would be small, so it does initially seem a little funny because
Mhm.
every set of cards for a movie instead of a team
Mhm.
will have James Bond in it, depending on who the actor was.
Yes.
James Bond's equipment, James
Mhm.
Bond's vehicle sometimes is a
Yes.
separate one, and then the sidekicks,
The side characters, either people who helped, of
and
course,
then
the Bond girl.
girl. So and then like how all these come together, it's
Mhm.
it's a whole different thing.
So yeah, I'm double checking our captions. So why
we
do
should
we
talk
love it?
about why we love it. Have we really talked about it? Me personally, it's because the game is because of the way it celebrates the genres it
Mhm.
tries to represent. The Marvel Legendary game, even though it uses the same system, feels so different from Buffy and from Big Trouble in Little
Mm.
China.
Yes,
and-
each one feels nicely distinct.
And how they celebrate it really works well. But then the Marvel game, it's just the width and breadth of it, that it spread so big, and it's insane what they've managed to incorporate.
Yes.
I mean, it was like already like you already expect that you get the MCU Avengers kind of into it, but we've reached the point where I can make West Coast Avengers already. That's amazing. And then you can do a full Spider-Verse game with different
Mhm.
incarnations of Spider-Man. Oh my gosh, the potential for stories recreated is insane.
I like how the game line also allows you to sort of what if scenarios in your head. We've played sessions wherein we got all the Ripleys in the Alien game and tried to have Ripley fight Galactus. No, Thanos. We had her fight Thanos.
Ripley's do not play well with one another.
Yes, because they can't heal. We
tried. One Ripley does.
We tried having the X-Men fight the aliens.
That didn't work out well either.
And then we also try our own little what ifs, like we'll have Xavier as the enemy because that's for the villains line, but then the heroes fighting them are this and that, and it brings that joy of how when you were young and you go through comics and you have that, what if the Thing fights the Hulk? The Thing is stronger, but you get to play it with friends in an interesting way. You get to create stories with the schemes. Everything as stupid as you have Galactus robbing the bank.
Yes, that has happened because there is a scheme to rob the bank, and then if you use Galactus as your mastermind, he is eating the planet but also robbing the bank.
And you have also great nostalgia moments. So like Firefly allows you to go through, Firefly and Buffy allow you to go through the episodes.
No, but Firefly in particular, because the series was so short, you are literally going to play through every episode, which means that yes, you must rob that train. And
you will encounter Mrs. Reynolds.
Oh my gosh, you will. And it's an experience in itself. The X-Files ones also plays through the seasons of the show and some of the different weird, strange creatures, aliens, whatnot that you have to face.
X-Files and if I remember correctly, it was Firefly introduced the idea that there could be negative effects caused by the other players. In X-Files, it's because of disbelief. And in Serenity, it was more because of the characters. If I remember, Jane...
Because they have flaws.
Jane can deal damage to all the other players and get a bonus because it's Jane and stuff like that.
So it's a lot of celebration of the shows.
I know what else we haven't mentioned. And they made the masterminds playable.
Yeah. So especially this is mainly in the Marvel line. That later on you could have a 6. It plays up to 5 players. You could have a 6-player play as the mastermind,
and they have their own deck. Rather than master strike cards triggering the mastermind attacking, the mastermind now has to generate enough strength to hit the opponents.
It's a bit of a solitaire game, I must admit. I've played the mastermind a few times, and then it's like you're just kind of like poking the heroes once a turn.
Encounters has this as well, where you play the alien, and
Okay, no wait. The Encounters line, especially the alien ones, has a traitor mechanic.
Yes.
Has you become the alien if you die mechanic. How these come together, oh my gosh, it does make for darker, more intense storytelling and a lot more intense PvP, because in Legendary Encounters you can have a point where only one player wins.
And mind you, the aliens approach allows different kinds of aliens. So you can be an armored alien, if you can be an attacking alien, you can be one of those queens that just creates babies. But yeah.
Most of the Encounters games have sort of been like one shot. So there's only one Legendary Firefly, Legendary Encounters Firefly, or Legendary Encounters Predator. The Alien line is the only one that has had expansions.
It has had 2 expansions so far.
Yeah, they had the one where they just give you tougher aliens, and then, hey, let's explore these strange prequels that have been released. And so there is a Covenant expansion.
Yes.
Yeah, so Covenant Prometheus that are brought into the mix. And
because I think the earlier one was the one that introduced the playable queen. And it pulled from the Dark Horse comics, because you had those colored clones, the red clone, the blue clone, and the yellow clone. Whereas the other one was pulling from the movies.
Mitch is asking, in Marvel, what is your favorite scenario? I think it's either the killing ancestors in the past or win World War II. Winning World War II changes the city length every time, because you're traveling to different countries and you must you must not allow villains to escape, if not they win that country. And some of the cities suddenly become 7 spaces, and some are as tiny as 2. So it gets crazy intense. But that the way that it played with the board and the basic rules and created a whole new experience.
Yeah.
Mwah!
Wonderful. I'll have to agree. And killing the ancestors back in time just has that amazing thematic feel.
hitting the quacker. So, and that's like our broad overview of all of Legendary.
That is why Legendary for us is legendary.
And and I think, and we could probably spend more time exploring individual Legendary lines. I guess before we fully wrap, I guess warning to people wanting to get into it. So the Marvel line is huge,
Yes.
and again, we warn you: the base game is not great on its own.
Mhm.
It's okay.
I mean, it's playable, it's fun, but you'll feel it could be more.
Yeah, and so if you're going to start the Marvel line, get ready. You're gonna go wide. It's a huge investment in sleeves. I go nuts when we have new expansions and I've run out of sleeves because we can't play it because we've sleeved every other card. And there are no efficient storage solutions. You will just keep trying to figure out how to make use of the boxes. If you want a slightly more conservative, like one-shot experience, I think Legendary Encounters Alien is still a very solid game on its own, and you don't even need the expansions because that explores the four main or four initial Alien movies masterfully well. The other non-Marvel games that have been released are actually great explorations of each genre.
Yes.
The Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a beautiful Buffy game.
I think Predator was the weakest.
Predator has been the weakest. It gets the least play. It's like practically in storage here.
It doesn't feel as balanced because this is a word of warning as well for me. Encounters is hard.
Yes.
You will more often than not fail.
Yes. Encounters is a much harder game.
Because it really demands that you work as a team. Whereas Marvel,
and you may have a traitor, so maybe you're not working.
Marvel can be good and easy depending on how it goes.
Yeah, Marvel. I think the card draw randomization factor is a little.
And that's what many people don't like about Legendary. They feel that there's a huge level of luck involved. I personally feel that given the large amount of options available, yes, that's true.
But as long as the players are working together and communicating what they're doing,
and if you pay no attention to the theme, then yes, you will have terrible experiences. I mean, if you're going to have a team that has, let's say, Silver Surfer with Spider-Man, with the Black Cat, and then you have Namor, and then it's too mixed up. None of them will be really working.
You don't have synergies, and therefore
you will have a harder time.
Jam cannot join the show.
So you have to be aware that when you make your setups for Marvel, you have to pay attention to who you're mixing together.
Your stories have to make sense. There's a certain degree of niche protection in characters.
And that's how it's different with Encounters, wherein the setups are based on specific movies or specific episodes. So the characters more or less work.
And there is a balance that they achieve when they work together. But in like our experience, when you mix movies, so you get each Ripley from the first four movies.
That's when you start to feel it doesn't work.
It feels a little broken because she's not designed to work that way. But yeah,
it still can.
Yeah, it still can. It's just harder. It's just adding a greater level of difficulty. And then again, for Encounters, we rarely play the advanced game, which includes the traitors and the other mechanics, because the base game is difficult enough. But some of you may want that experience. Yeah. Legendary totally supports it, and that's awesome.
So that is why we love the Legendary deck building collection of games.
Yes, and we own pretty much all of them. I think the only ones we haven't purchased are the new ones, and then things like the MCU anniversary set,
and the ones that I don't think we will ever find, which were those very limited.
Oh, those like what? But hey, I found some of those rare stuff,
but those are
which got released in a box anyway. And then word of warning: the James Bond line. It's very promising. If you love James Bond, it looks like it's a great thing. But think about how many James Bond movies there are, because Upper Deck has realized this. And they already have expansions lined up. So your first set only features 4 Bond movies, 4 Bonds, whatever. And there's already an expansion out that will give you some more Bonds, so that it's it's gonna be painful on the wallet for sure. Okay,
but overall, Legendary 1 to 5 players. It's solo friendly. It still works with 2 players, and it can have as many as 5.
I think 3 is still our sweet spot for players. 2, it's a little wonky for us when we're just testing out new expansions. 5 starts to crawl, and it gets really hard because then that's 5 times that the mastermind can hit you or whatever. So anyway, we may have to explore this further in another episode.
But that's 30 minutes.
It's more than 30 minutes.
So we had a lot of fun. We hope you'll join us next time.
I always forget I'm going to do this thing of whatever. So if you have questions for me and Toby, or you have suggestions for future episodes, just fill out the form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. You can follow us on Twitter. This is all Toby No Shade. I'm RG Suniko.
You can also check out our blog, baduypride.com. It has everything from, I was about to say clips. It has our older episodes.
It has links to the YouTube embeds.
It has images and posts about our life.
Yes. Okay. And then feel free to continue the conversation in the comments. If what do you think about the legendary games? Which ones do you like? Which ones you don't like? How much have you spent on card sleeves? We would love to know.
Be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. And even if this episode is done, please still reshare the link so more people learn about the show.
Reshare it, like it, and try to get more people into Legendary because we will always want to play a game. So once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And this is Baduy Pride. And screen. And can you come closer to the middle?